Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jim Kleiber Show. Today is Friday, September 25th, 2020. It's the end of the week, and today we'll have my friend Caleb Cliff joining today in about 15 minutes from now. But for the beginning, I'm just going to start by myself. And, oh goodness, there's always a lot to talk about. Or put it this way, I always have a lot to talk about. I'm curious about many different topics. And so today, what's special about today? Today, Ruth Bader Ginsburg had a memorial service, and she was lying in state at the U.S. Capitol building, and apparently is the first woman to ever lie in state at the Capitol building. And it struck me that, many times we think we haven't come that far in this country and that things are horrible and things really haven't changed, but I think we've come a really far way. I think we've come a really long way since the U.S. was founded. I was just talking with my family about this. When the U.S. was founded, gosh, who was allowed to vote? I think it was only rich white men. I think those were the only people who were allowed to vote. And so, like, any other race, not allowed to vote. Any other class, not allowed to vote. Any other gender, not really allowed to vote. And it took a long time to change things. But things are changing. John Lewis lied in state earlier. Lane? Is it lied in state earlier or lay in state earlier this year. And I think was one of the first, if not the first black person to do so in the Capitol. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg being the first woman to do so. I think we can have a tendency to look back on history and think that things haven't changed much. Or we look at the present and we think things are so bad, without realizing that the situation has changed a lot. Gosh. Just even looking back on, from the stories I hear about the Great Depression in the 20s and 30s, and how people were eating ketchup sandwiches. And maybe it's just because I'm in a more fortunate position right now, but I think society-wise, we went through a couple of recessions in the 80s, and then also 2008, 2009 in the US, and also you argue now, even though the stock market doesn't look like it, many people are really struggling. But I don't know if it's to the level where people are eating ketchup sandwiches, maybe in some parts, but I think our food production and our food distribution in many parts of the world has really improved. Same thing with like child mortality, infant mortality. Apparently it's improved tremendously, and life expectancy has gone up in many parts of the world just because we've become so much better at preventing deaths of humans under the age of 5. So many things that have improved, but it's hard to see when we're just focused on what's, how much struggle we're experiencing in the moment. I don't know. I want to reflect a little bit when Caleb joins, but I'll start now just talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and how I don't know much about her. And part of me feels a bit guilty that I don't know more about her, but really I don't know too much about any of the Supreme Court justices. And arguably before these last couple of years, I didn't know too much about any of our politicians. Really, it's like I don't know who they are. I've never met them. I don't pay attention to them too much. Supreme Court justices are pretty quiet, stay away from the news, stay away from the media a lot. And so I'm not too familiar with a lot of their personality, their humanness, their humanhood, if that's a word. But humanhood, I like that. But maybe that doesn't matter. It's they do their job. They play a role in society, and they help us figure out the interpretation of the laws. And so much of that stuff is way over my head. And I'm grateful that there are people who study it judiciously and who are able to perform that role for society. Especially interesting, like a lifetime appointment, to get appointed for life to such a powerful yet important role in society, and to have so much responsibility. I wonder what it would be like to be a Supreme Court justice. I don't see that ever coming into my path. But I wonder what it must feel like to be in those shoes, to sit in those chairs, to wear those robes. I don't know. Again, it's kind of like, maybe that's the purpose of this idea of a representative democracy, is that we have people that represent us in running the government, and we're able to choose them, or more often than not, vote people out that we don't want, choose the people we don't want. But they do the job, and we trust them to do what they're trying to do. And I don't want to live in a direct democracy where I have to make decisions on everything. Oh, that sounds horrible. I really don't want to have to vote on every single minute decision. There's so many things I don't know about, and so many things I don't really care about, or care about enough to do a good job. So I'm grateful for the people who are in the Supreme Court, the people who are in Congress, the people who are in the executive branch, the people who are government employees and career government employees who do the work day in, day out, whether it's related to cleaning up the environment or regulating the food that we eat, or overseeing the road construction. And I appreciate so much work that so many other people do. And I think that's what I see with Ginsburg, is that I didn't have to know her to appreciate her. I don't have to feel very connected to who she is to recognize the importance of the work that she did. And to imagine, the struggles of that job. I don't have to know a person to imagine how difficult their job might be, or how terrifying it might be for me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I imagine, have you really thought about what it's like to be a Supreme Court justice? Or have you thought about, what it would be like to be appointed to a position for life? Have you thought about the feelings that you might have when you think about making decisions for that many people that last for that long? I mean, these decisions are almost etched in stone, right? Supreme Court justice opinions, Supreme Court opinions, last for quite a long time, unless they are overturned, and I don't even know the proper terminology for it. So, yeah, it's maybe some of you have felt a lot closer to her than I have. Maybe some of you looked up to her. Maybe some of you even had more adversarial relationship towards her, because of some of her views or some of her decisions in the past. But I think today is a day to just pause and recognize that she's a human being. She was a human being just like every one of us. And she played a role in society just like every one of us does. And it's just a different role. And she was trying her best. I strongly believe she was trying her best. And I think it's all we can really ask for. That's all I really want to ask for, is that people just try their best. And yeah. I found it interesting that at the funeral, or at the memorial service today, apparently not too many, if any, Republican members of Congress showed up, and I don't think the president or the vice president showed up. I believe the president showed up, was it yesterday, to a viewing, and some protesters or people outside were booing him and shouting at him, and I don't know if that's why Republicans didn't show up today. It could be. I saw Joe Biden was there with his wife, Jill Biden. Gosh, their names sound so similar. Joe and Jill. Joe and Jill Biden. And and I'm sure there are many others. One thing I saw quickly before joining on this call was that apparently Ruth Bader Ginsburg's personal trainer was there, her physical trainer. And to honor her, he got down and did a few push-ups in front of the casket. And I found that really touched my heart. It's the simple things in life, isn't it? Yeah, somebody else on Twitter said that they felt really almost calm to see the Bidens there, and just realized how much they missed seeing their president at a funeral service, or at kind of a memorial service, and how it felt really nice to just see the president there showing respect, paying respect to the loss of an important governmental figure in our society. I feel the same way. I feel sad that our elected leaders aren't showing the courage to show up sometimes for the people that don't like them. Now, I mean, you could argue that maybe they're doing it in good intention. They don't want to bring ill attention to the event. They don't want to make it more controversial or political than it would be. It's the person who doesn't want to show up to the family reunion because they know the grandma doesn't like them, and they don't want to cause a scene. They don't want to cause a fuss. But it's so maybe it is coming from that good intention. I don't know. I still like to see people from across the aisle, from so many sides of the political spectrum, showing up and showing support and love to someone who ideally was supposed to be nonpartisan, bipartisan, transpartisan, basically go across the political partisan divides. I don't know. I just really would have liked to see the appreciation for what the person did, regardless of who they were. Or rather, the appreciation of who they are, regardless of what they did, both. And but you know what? Everyone grieves differently. And not everyone likes going to funerals. Not everyone likes going to memorials. Not everyone likes going to these types of events. And I think from a personal standpoint, that's okay. I do believe that in times of grief, we look to leaders to hold us together, to just be there with us, to see that in our deepest times of need, that they, even if they don't know what they're doing, they care. Yeah, how I yearn to see leaders show up at funerals. Seems like such a simple thing, but maybe insignificant for others. But for me, it's a statement. It's a statement that in some of the most significant moments of our lives, they'll show up for us. And on that note, 15 minutes is up, monologue done. I'm going to bring in this bright shining soul of Caleb Cliff, add him to the stream. Voila. Let me turn the music on so I can hear him. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hey, it
All
works. Right. Hey, how's it going, my capped friend?
Always reflective when I have glasses on, but unfortunately,
The reflective show.
Yes. It's unavoidable, no matter what height I'm at. Maybe if I sink down a little lower, I don't know. Anyways, it's good. It's been a long week for me. Not to get distracted too much by that, just more going on than usual. But there was, to speak directly to a little bit of what you were talking about, not that I actually listened, but WNYC covered a lot of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's funeral. They did it yesterday as well as today. They had, just cut in over normal programming time with stuff related to her. I mean, obviously she's from Brooklyn, I believe. So that was actually before, as we were kind of briefly communicating, that neither of us are that informed about her. One thing I did learn earlier this week was the comparison to the Notorious B.I.G. Is that they're both from Brooklyn. So that was one thing that she actually, it was a little recording of her actually saying that in an interview. That was kind of funny. She
gave herself the nickname Notorious RBG?
Oh, no. Just when the comparison was, she said, well, what do you make of this? And she said, well, we are both from Brooklyn. So.
Okay, I was going to say, that's a pretty bold self-nickname.
Oh, God, no, I have no idea who gave her that. But there is one thing that, so I have a interesting, albeit small, but little bit of a connection to her. My friend has a, for lack of a better term, product company. And one of the things that they've been very successful with is making these small political action figures. And they did one of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, cool.
And on the Kickstarter campaign, I did the music for it. So, and she, not everybody has had this happen, but she actually, on the day that I think that she passed, the company actually posted a picture of her receiving that action figure. Someone had managed to get it to her, and someone else there snapped a picture of it. So that was pretty cool.
Wow. So you have more connection to her than you thought.
I mean, like I said, it's pretty loose. But it, in all of these campaigns that I've done the music for him, I've done like 3 or 4 of them now. It feels nice to do the little bit of support that I can to promote these people, and even if it's in the somewhat materialist fashion, I can kind of look beyond that to see the greater good of it.
Do you think she ever heard the song?
I would love it if she did, but I'm not holding my breath.
And the other question is, does the song sound like a Notorious B.I.G. song?
No. In fact, he gave me examples of, I think at the time there was either a Nike ad or an Apple ad where they used a lot of like clapping sounds. So there's a lot of like clapping.
Apple. Yeah.
But, it was fun. It came out well. I was pretty happy with the final product. I think it's still somewhere on the internet. But
it wasn't mo cases, mo problems.
No, it was instrumental.
Oh man, in retrospect, if you could have had her rapping on, that could have been interesting.
Oh, that would, yeah, that would have been something.
Well, for the next political figure, I guess.
Yeah, bound to happen.
Yeah, it's. I was just reflecting on how I don't know too much about her, but maybe that's part of the point. She's a Supreme Court justice, and maybe I don't have to know too much about the Supreme Court justices. Maybe they just do their job. And they stay out of the limelight, and they're not in the media and TV all the time. And
there was one other really interesting thing that I learned about her this week, and that was, I'm not going to get this completely accurate, but I'll get the gist of it. Basically, she was trying to become a lawyer and become, advance into, having her own firm. But there was some older white man, of course, said, "Oh, well, that's not really possible for you." And because of that redirection, that's actually one of the main things that caused her to become a Supreme Court justice.
How often in life do we do really big things just because we want to prove somebody else wrong?
Well, but it wasn't. I think it was more the route that it ended putting her on. I don't even know if it was.
Yeah.
Saying it was more because he suggested that she not do that, and I just thought it was kind of
almost the opposite, where she redirected because of it. Like, instead of trying to prove him, no, I'm going to start my own firm and show you.
Yeah,
it was okay. Maybe I'll go in this direction instead.
Right, and lo and behold, she becomes a Supreme Court justice, and probably one of the most, I would say, I mean, again, not knowing enough, more influential Supreme Court justices of the past 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, phenomenal. I mean, even just in terms of courage and persistence, like if you know nothing else of the woman, and maybe you don't, or if there is something, a ruling that she made that you don't side with, you have to give her credit for just that level of ability to keep coming back and keep trying and not quitting.
Tough.
Yeah.
Tough woman.
Yeah.
Till the end, right?
Yeah. Well, and supposedly, what was the complications of her cancer? Not even the cancer itself. I don't know.
Oh, really?
What that means. But.
Well, and supposedly she was still working, like pretty much up until the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh.
Definitely a woman understanding her mission.
And maybe really enjoying it too. I wonder how much of it is like I feel responsible and I must do this, and the other part is I love doing this. The professor who researches and writes books until they die at 97 or something.
Absolutely. I feel like most musicians are like that. They'll play pretty much until the end. So being passionate and fully embodied with your work, I think, and yeah, she definitely falls into that for sure.
Yeah, it's. I was a little surprised that I think today in the memorial they only had one person speak. I think it was the rabbi, perhaps. I didn't watch it. I was out, but I think only one person spoke, compared to when John Lewis had a memorial service and there were 3 or 4 speeches at least.
Mm-hmm.
I just found that interesting. I don't know if that was a choice of hers or a choice of the families, or I don't know if it had anything to do with not wanting to appear political or not wanting to, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff happening in New York this week around memorializing her. So,
okay.
I don't know if all of it's getting the same type of coverage, but I do know that, because I listen to WNYC most days, I just like catching tidbits about that.
Well, and maybe it's that too. Maybe there is more kind of a distributed celebration or distributed memorial.
Well, it also might have something to do with her being Jewish. That might.
Good point. Good point. Maybe there's a different type of burial process or memorial process for people who are Jewish.
Definitely, I actually was recently introduced So probably a fair number of people know that sitting Shiva is the week-long grief period after someone passes, and you literally you just sit at home and you have people come to visit you at your house or wherever you live, and and share stories. And I think there's very little technology and other things in your life. It's just dedicated to just really grieving, just remembering this person. And then the thing that I didn't know about until recently is the following year is called Yahrzeit. And it's basically a set time for mourning the person, and then also a set time for you to re-enter more fully back into society and technically finish your mourning, but more as an acknowledgement of like, this person, I wanted to give this person a proper dedication, of my being, and then I know that person would want me to re-enter and go back and make sure that I'm doing the good work that I need to do. So I thought that was I already thought sitting Shiva was a nice thing, but knowing that there's then this whole other year of mourning that comes after that seems appropriate. And
yeah, I really like that. It's giving people permission to grieve for that long, but also giving a timeline.
Right.
So like not too short, like not like, okay, they died, okay, you have like 3 days. Oh, you should be back to normal, which a lot of our society does. Like,
right.
Okay, like you already had the funeral, so you should be done. Like,
right.
Really? Like,
right.
That fast?
So simple and easy to get over.
And it might also, not just for the person who's trying to grieve or like directly try to grieve, but the people who are grieving indirectly. It can give them permission and a reminder to check in with the person. Because I think what happens a lot of times when people pass that I've seen is that the person passes and everyone reaches out. Oh, are you okay? Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. I'm praying for you. You're in my heart and my mind and everything like this. And then 2 weeks later, nobody reaches out.
Yeah.
And just this almost maybe empty feeling that like people don't care anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I have some recent experience with this. I mean, honestly, it's right now, but it's so tough, I don't know. I don't think there is a right or wrong. I think something that our culture does kind of incidentally promote. I don't think it's necessarily always on purpose, but is this, it's just distraction, and how for some people that feels way easier than trying to take on all of the difficult emotions that come with the loss of someone. I don't know if it's the healthiest, but it's not to say that lots of people don't do it still. Just a short aside, but I wanted to say it because it's something I've always really loved, is that elephants will always kind of have this brief moment when they come across other elephant bones, and they'll sniff around them as just a sort of, it's just like an acknowledgement. I don't even know if it needs to be a contemporary loss. Like those bones could be there from 3 years ago or something. But I appreciate that they do that. But what's interesting is the only other kinds of bones where they'll do that is of human bones. So there seems to be some kind of cross-species recognition of sorts that, I don't know, that just goes deep into a place that I can't speak to, but I appreciate. And yeah, I don't know.
We're long lost friends, us and the elephants. We used to be super, super tight back in the day, but now
I get the reverie of them in India. I mean, it makes sense to me. If they're very big, but they're gentle and amazing creatures. but they're also very misunderstood and in recent years because of such great loss and such disruption of family hierarchies and things like that. And it's only the same thing happen in human relationships. It's not that strange to understand why they would be there's more lash outs and things within within elephant colonies and things. But
I mean, on that, what was I watching the other day? I was watching Cosmos. There's a new Cosmos series out with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think it's Cosmos Possibilities, I think it's called.
Oh.
And it's talking much more about life on Earth than I think I didn't see the first one, but I think the first one was much more about other planets and Big Bang and how the whole universe came to form. Maybe it went deeper into Earth, but I'm not sure. Did you see it?
No, I didn't actually realize that was happening.
So anyways, this one, at least the first 2 episodes are talking about life. And really interesting, just talking about how, what makes us human. And he goes through all these things like, oh, we thought human meant that we had this, and nope, these other animals have this. Oh, we thought humans were social. Nope, ants and termites and other insects are much more social than we are, more organized. Okay, well, we thought, humans use tools. Nope, and he shows like videos of chimpanzees and gorillas and like all these other animals, typically primates, using tools.
Yeah.
But birds use tools and things like that too. It's like, huh, okay. And it just goes through like, so what does really make us so different from the other animals? And I think what he said was that we think we're so different. That's what makes us different, is that we think we're different.
I do have a hard time. I mean, I don't know. There were. So I've been vegetarian for almost 25 years, and the main question that led me to that was, after being exposed to a lot of vegetarians and thoughts on the matter, but the one question I asked myself was, what do you have a reason? Do you know why you eat animals? And I was like, I had no idea. And honestly, because I grew up with cats, which is not an uncommon thing, but I really liked them. They felt like my friends. And, I always give credit to being half raised by cats, just because they were there when I was born. And but it was a sincere notion of just being like, what do you see yourself above animals? And I never really have. And not to say that I can communicate with them like I'm like a dog whisperer or something, but I respect them, and I feel their emotional qualities and whatnot. And I think it is a very human thing to want to make that distinction. And animals do it effortlessly without ever having to tell us. They just go do their animal thing, and that's fine.
Maybe they're trying to tell us and we just don't hear it.
I mean, you can say that about nature, I think, in a large capacity.
What I read, it said that cats don't meow to other cats. Only when they're little kittens do they do that. But then when they meow, it's basically just to talk to humans.
Right.
Trying to like imitate the human voice. Wow.
Oh, I mean, my friend's cat, oh my gosh, she totally will like chat with you. She'll a chirper. Chirp, chirp.
Oh.
And you're like, yeah. And she's like, yeah. Very tenor. But no, I do. I not to stray. Continue straying so far from.
Not to stray. All we do is stray.
No, I do. I know we're very good at it, but I feel like. Well, do I want to say that? I feel like she was trying so hard to make it through this to the next election cycle, so that this current appointment process, wouldn't actually be happening.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't need to get into a real. It just again speaks to her consideration and to her resilience, and I mean, she got darn close. She really did. But I wish we knew a little bit more about the things that she did, because I feel fairly convinced that she did some incredible things for women while she was a part of the Supreme Court and represented. Was she? I feel like I should know this. Was she the first woman on the Supreme Court?
Maybe. See, like, part of I can get very frustrated with myself for not knowing some things like this. Oh, I should know things like this. I should be better. I should stay well read about this and that. Oh, I need to understand. And sometimes I just want to give myself permission. It's okay. I don't need to know everything. Well, and in a way, it's to not like demonize her, but you know what I mean? I don't have to know her super well, and I don't have to necessarily know the impact that she had on other women. I mean, maybe other people would say, no, you should know because she's a very important figure in society. But there are a lot of important figures in society I don't know, including white men. There are a lot of white men I have no idea what they did.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you ask me about people on the Supreme Court right now, I really don't know much about any of them.
No, I mean, I know a little more about Clarence Thomas just because I was old enough to remember when those hearings happened and all the stuff with the Hill. And that was the political things I learned in my teenage years were mostly these big kind of well publicized events rather than they were so political. But that would be about it. I mean, I've heard opinions about a lot of them.
I've heard some of the names throughout this, I've heard some of the names like Rehnquist and Warren and some of the but I don't know much about many of them. So I think I'm trying to give myself permission to not beat myself up for not knowing too much about Ginsburg, because, I think as a man, I'm supposed to know more about women who have made historical achievements. But remembering I don't know too much about any of them, and that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and it also gives you, but knowing that you don't know gives you the opportunity to know.
Yeah. I'm open to learning.
Right. Because I would argue a lot of people, it feels like, I'll say it that way. It feels like a lot of people, I don't want to say they pretend to know, but they'll speak in ways that suggest that they know so much, and I don't know that that's actually true. So I think it's far better to err on the side of not knowing and admitting to that, and that's fine. You're a very curious person. I trust that it's not a matter of you not wanting to know. It's just that the relevant time for you to know more hasn't happened yet, and that's fine. Right?
Yeah. I mean, if somebody wants to share with me and, somebody knows a lot, then I can ask them questions. But
right. Yeah.
I think sometimes it could be so hard to say that we don't know something, because if I say I don't know, a lot of times other people would be like, you should know.
Right.
Oh, why should I know? Because how do you not know what this person accomplished? They did so much, either good or bad or both, right? Oh, this person was a hero, or this person was a demon, or this person was a... I don't know.
I mean, there's a part of me that feels...
What's wrong with you? Why don't you know? I don't know, because there's a lot of stuff to know, and I just don't know. Because I was reading a linguistics blog. I don't know. I was reading other stuff.
In the information age, there's anything and all things to find out about. I don't know. I'll happily be the first person to admit to many things that I don't know, or the many things that I once knew and have kind of forgotten. But I sort of have the Santa Claus approach in some ways to a lot of famous people. Naughty or nice. Like, basically, was she a naughty or nice person? I believe she was, much more than nice, but she was on the nice side of things.
Do you keep a list? And are you checking it twice?
Not a bit, but maybe a bit.
A less surveillance type of Santa Claus.
Yeah. It's and I don't. It's complicated these days too, especially when there's a lot of these like seats that are not supposed to be political seats, right? And yet, it seems as if though certain biases are now being voted into these seats or nominated into these seats, and that makes it tricky. I mean, especially in the Supreme Court, like where they're really supposed to somehow, I have no idea how, but exist on this edge, or this other more literally supreme space that completely beguiles my brain. I can't even imagine existing in this country without having some opinion, and in some cases much stronger opinions about a lot of things that are happening, because a lot of things are happening, and I do have opinions. I think
it's okay. I think it's okay. And I think what I love about the concept of a Supreme Court justice is that these people are supposed to interpret the law, the written law, and how it is written and how it applies to specific cases. They're supposed to basically look at the words that we've agreed upon throughout society and see how it works with current things that are happening. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a justice. I don't know most of the laws. But they're supposed to know the laws and deeply know the laws and interpret them and be almost loyal to the law, which ideally I think a lot of citizens are, but most of us have no idea what the laws are. We may pretend.
Yeah,
but we don't know.
And
we hire lawyers and hope that they know.
Do you know, or does this make sense to you? Do you think that's something the founding fathers or whoever determined that the Supreme Court should exist? Is that kind of our little piece of parliamentary government that we reinterpreted into the Supreme Court? Because I want to say that parliamentary government in England is 9 people.
Oh, whether it's like a direct translation from it or direct, I don't know.
Because it's the same, but it's the same idea, is that you can't, having one person making these decisions just wouldn't be wise. You have to have a kind of culture of brains, if you will, going at these singular decisions. Because
I mean, I would say that throughout at least the design of the government that I understand, that there is more of that balance. The executive branch, at least at the federal level, is arguably like a unitary, so it's like not too many voices. But even if you look at states, they have multiple people in the executive branch that are elected. So the governor's elected, but in some places the attorney general's elected separately, and the secretary of state is elected separately at the state level. So even there is almost like a committee of people from different perspectives. But definitely in the legislative branch, but with 100 people in Senate and stuff like that. But definitely as well in the judicial branch, where the Supreme Court has, like you said, 9 justices. But in general, we have juries, which are composed of, I don't know how many people, I think 15.
Or 12 or
12, maybe something like that. Yeah. But regardless, a number of people that have to come to some type of consensus and bring different perspectives to the table.
But there are Supreme Courts for each state too, right? Yeah,
each state has a Supreme Court. I'm going to show a comment from a friend, Latif, who talks about checks and balances. Yeah. And so just this idea of checks and balances, not only between the different branches or among the branches, but within the branches themselves. The checks and balances of the 9 justices balancing each other in some ways.
Well, right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't envy their position. I feel that you probably feel the same way. Uh, I I feel like that, gosh, especially presently, would be one of the most stressful jobs, just because, in a sense, you're like dealing with the hardest, most impactful decisions that uh, influence this country. And I don't want that weight, not on these shoulders. No, thank you.
And have probably so much pressure to conform and to join one of the teams.
Oh yeah.
No, like they were supposed to be elected to be independent, and they're supposed to have life terms, so they didn't have to deal with elections. I think so they didn't have to cave into some of these parties and factions. But still, like the pressure is tremendous.
Oh,
Are you on my team or are you against me? Well, I don't know. I don't know what I believe on this thing. No, you need to know what you believe, because our team says you believe this. So if you don't believe this, you're not on our team.
yeah.
Well, that doesn't this. I mean, a little bit. Okay, so yesterday I was reading about justice for Breonna Taylor. There's a website, Justice for Breonna, I think it is, and they had like 9 different demands on there, and many of the demands I agreed with. It was like community policing, like have more oversight of the police department when it's a officer involved shooting or officer involved case. Many other ones, like maybe eliminating no-knock warrants and stuff like this. So I thought, okay, yeah, cool. Different police reforms makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
There was one that said, we demand that the officers are removed from their jobs, they lose their pension. Okay. We also demand that they are something like charged, tried, and convicted or something. And I'm like, you can't demand that they're convicted. That's not how the law works. You can't. I mean, you could try to demand it, but at least from my perspective, it's like the law has to do its thing.
I mean, peeling that back a little bit, I feel it emotionally. I feel that, and I think there are a number of cases where you could argue that the cops probably should be convicted. There are some very troubling things that have happened over the years simply by the structure becoming more and more abused by certain, thankfully, small percentage of cops, but it's still happening, and now more than ever it's being publicized. And I agree with you. I don't think you can just make a conviction. Like, you can't just demand a conviction. It still has to go through the legal process. But the fact that there isn't even a trial is where it's troublesome, because it's, a very innocent person died, and the guy they were looking for wasn't even there, right?
I don't know. And again, this is one of those things where I don't know too much, but a lot of people seem to know on both sides with certainty about what happened, who aren't even there. They're reading it on the internet. And so for me, like a lot of it, the hard part, and this goes back into the Supreme Court justice thing, is that it seems like a lot of us, whichever side we're on, right? Whichever side we're on in different scenarios, want a specific outcome and don't trust the judicial process to get to that outcome. Because at least for this, in Kentucky, there was a grand jury trial, which is secret by nature, because they don't want the information to leak. And the whole idea is, should we charge or indict this person?
Right.
And so they went through a trial. They presented evidence at the trial. And grand jury trials, from my understanding, are one-sided. So the defendant doesn't even have a chance to defend themselves. So it's really like, do we think we have a case? And we present it in front of a secret jury, and to think if we have a case to even go to trial.
Right.
Now, arguably, you can say that. So that's the charge part. Okay, well, maybe that process needs more transparency, or maybe we need more fairness on that process. I don't know. But like, not trying to dwell too much on what happened in that case, but more overall just imagining what it might be like to be a judge, especially at a very high level, and to have so much social media societal pressure trying to sway you in one or the other direction.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well,
and to pull you away from really what the law says and more into what your team says. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Well, and I think too, it's all heightened in these times of a lot of things being labeled as fake. And so, meaning some people, I think all of us are a bit susceptible to it just because we've seen deep fake videos. We've seen things that we know are genuinely are not real. So we might give into it. Some of us might give into it more than others, but and especially if you feel that you've been disenfranchised in this country for hundreds of years, it might be really hard to believe in the judicial process because it has not seemingly come through with any regularity for your side or your color of skin. And I can see how that, there is a deep echo in that statement that they made. And I get that. And I think more than reading those words very literally is that there's something much, much, much greater being stated there. And I think that's the thing to really understand, at least to give credence to and to take a moment and pause and be like, right, not me as an individual, what have many of us done to contribute to that feeling? And are there ways of us, desystematizing ourselves, if you will, pulling away from the systematic racism that unfortunately this country was built upon, and even the Constitution in its original form had systemic racism, and even systemic, it wasn't even pro-woman.
It wasn't pro poor people either.
Yeah, it was a very, very elitist.
When I started talking today, what I mentioned was the people who could vote in the beginning were, I think, rich white men. That's the only people who could vote in this country.
Right,
Black people could vote before women could.
Men
could vote before women.
You had to own property, right?
Yeah, you had to own property. I think there were, yeah. And so, like,
that's very problematic.
It's funny, as you were saying to not take the words too literally, what popped into my mind is how a lot of times people will talk about justices, especially Supreme Court justices, as being, I forget the different terms, but the one term is like a literal reader of the law, like a literalist maybe. Yeah. And then the other one is like someone who reads the spirit of the law or the intention behind it.
Right.
And fascinating. So like I was reading like the absolute words, like we demand. I'm like, no, you could really want, but when you say demand, it's very coercive and forceful.
Yeah.
And you were looking more at the spirit of it, saying, no, they're very angry and maybe feeling helpless and frustrated and overwhelmed and hopeless about some of the stuff. And just, that's maybe a lot of that coming out through that word.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
So imagining that challenge, but for not just a podcast conversation, but for writing law that applies to 330 million people, plus all the, the future people we're going to have in this country, plus many other countries as well.
Right. Oh yeah. No, it's again, it's too much for me to even consider. And just to, is this a potential segue into maybe the last few minutes talking about what you suggest?
Let's talk about that on Monday. It was a concept dealing more with or we can talk about that maybe next week and let it percolate a little bit. But it was more about dealing with emotional health and trying to be like a first responder for emotional health. But I want to let that sit for over the weekend. Plus, there's only a few minutes left. I want to really hammer home on this.
Yeah. No, I think it's, is it one of those things where really, even though it's a little dull maybe for some of us, but would it make sense for our education for this to be a part of our general education. Really truly understanding how the law works, because in a sense you have this bar up here, where a small percentage, you would say, of lawyers and judges and other people actually really know how to read and interpret the law, and also therefore know how to defend themselves or be on the offense in a case or whatever it is. And then you have the majority of us, the big majority of us, who are like, and the law is ugly and complex and terrible to read. I've worked in contracts before, and that was just to work with musicians and stuff to make sure they were getting the proper rights and residuals. That was already ugly enough to look at. I can't imagine looking at one of these 1,000-page policy bills that seems to be the average anymore in government. And but how would it change if we, even if we just had 30% of the knowledge, enough to be able to actually genuinely defend ourselves in court or something? I feel like that's a big gap.
As you're first saying it, I was thinking, oh yes, I mean, because how much do we teach civics anymore? What was the
I don't know.
What was that TV show? I can remember they did Conjunction Junction, but they also did
Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock, yeah, with the bill, how the bill becomes a law.
Yeah,
sitting on the steps of Congress and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, so, that stuff was great.
Yeah, but so yeah, I believe that the government should teach citizens much more about government. From a public education standpoint, I believe that should be one of the number one things that we teach: how government functions, the checks and balances in the government. Like I said earlier, I have a friend, somebody who commented on the video, my friend Latif, said that he knows about checks and balances, and I don't know if he's ever been to the US. He grew up in East Africa and he lives in Europe, but he still knows about American checks and balances. So there are many people around the world who understand how our government is structured more than we do. And yeah, I wish that we could, one, be taught it, but two, be excited to learn it more. In a weird way, I am grateful that Trump has been president, because I have been very motivated to learn about the law and the system of government we have. I didn't know about all these positions, like deputy undersecretary for the labor department. I didn't know of these people. But I think the other thing is that I worry a little bit that as we learn more about politics and as we have more kind of agency in voting, more voting power in American Idol and other online ways, more ways that we can get involved in the process, that we want more of a direct democracy in the US. And this country is built on a representative democracy, not direct democracy. There's some referendums and things in some states and places, but most of this country is built on electing people to make those decisions for us, not us making those decisions directly. And you know what? I like that form of government. I don't want to make these decisions. I want other people to make them. I want to choose people that I think are good decision makers and let them make decisions. And then I can do the stuff I want to do in life. I don't want to sit and necessarily write bills and no, I want other people to do this.
And I don't know that it would quite ever get that far, I guess, but there is a piece of me that feels that gap enables those who want to take advantage of the system in those places to be able to take advantage of it more than they should. And that to me is the big difference, is the more tight closing of that gap from the average citizen. Not to become, my gosh, I'm with you, I don't want to write policies. No way. That stuff's heady and takes time. I mostly feel that it wasn't built to be this way, but people have started taking advantage of it to kind of reinforce institutionalization of certain ideas, colonization of people, that types of thing. And so it feels like either we rewrite a lot of our laws, which I honestly think would make a lot of sense. I think some of our laws are so steeped in themselves that they've actually started contradicting themselves. But this idea that we keep building on top of the stuff that's already there, and then only the people with that certain knowledge can keep holding that space, and the rest of us just get further and further behind.
Well, I think what could happen if we become more informed as citizens is that we could be more informed in choosing the people we want to make those decisions, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I like you're talking about, because the more that I know about government, the more that, like, for example, one question I wanted to ask to some of the presidential candidates, I forget who it was, Kirsten Gillibrand came to Michigan, and I went with my dad to go see her speak, and I was frustrated with myself. I didn't want to be the first person to raise my hand, and then by the time I waited, other people had already raised their hand, and I missed my opportunity. But the question I wanted to ask is, you are moving from the legislative branch to the executive branch. What challenges do you anticipate encountering as you switch branches of government? I don't think one, they think about it that much as a candidate. Maybe they do. Maybe they think about it a lot more than I give them credit for. But two, how often do we ask them about it? The role of an executive is very different than the role of legislative. If you're going to be the president, you're running an organization that has millions of people employed for you, underneath you. You command the military. If you're a senator, you're one of 100 people that represent, one of 2 that represent your state, one of 100 in the country that has an office of maybe 10, 15, 20 people, maybe.
Right.
And you bring your voice to the table of 100 voices. It's very different in terms of what you do on a daily basis than what you would do as a president. But
no, for sure.
How many of us make our decisions when we're voting for somebody in office based on that versus, they are against abortion or for abortion, or pro-choice or pro-life rather, or et cetera, et cetera. Like, how much does it have actually to do with what they're doing in their role in their job? We don't know about the job positions. We don't know the job descriptions.
I think too, I know we're coming to a close here, but the one thing that you made me think in all of this, because it's like the laws and policies have become so gigantic and are and like highly nuanced that speaking to such specifics would just be endless, and I don't know, you probably lose track of what's even being talked about in a lot of ways. So it's back to this idea of character of a person running, and I'm more into the idea of the well-balanced philosopher as opposed to someone who might be highly educated within the practices of government, but doesn't actually have a good critical mind. And so where it's just again this other area where it's like, take him or leave him. I did appreciate that one of the things about Obama was he had a very good critical mind. I feel like he could hold a lot of different things, and he could make, some difficult compromises and things when he was president. And I prefer to think about people that way than all the details and all the paper, the on paper version of them, if you will. But this could be a whole other podcast.
Well, and for me, just to end on that, it's like, for which role? For the president? Or do you want the same characteristics and the same behaviors across? Should a judge behave the same way as a president, as the same way as a representative in the House of Representatives of 435 people? Like, me personally, no.
not necessarily the exact same behaviors, but that level to hold those many things. But don't forget, Obama was a lawyer. He went to law school, so he did have that critical mind developed in a very similar space as to all of these other people. But I guess it just, to me, is sort of like, no, you have that as your backdrop, and then you have your specialties. But I do feel like there should be times when you maybe go against your party or whatever. That's part of having a critical mind, in my opinion. You know?
And for me, like when I look at the Senate or I look at the House, when I look at being in the legislative branch or representative at really any level in the country, it's about representing the geographical district you are from. That, for me, should be a main point. So when something of that geographical district goes against what the party says, I would hope that sometimes they represent the geographical district over the party.
Oh,
and so, and also their own perspective and bring their perspective. Like, but I don't see that so much. And so for me, what frustrates me a lot, like there's a guy in Michigan that's running for Senate, John James. He ran for Senate last time and didn't win, but he's running this time, and I think he's got a chance. I really like how he speaks, and I will not vote for him because I think he will he will do everything the Republicans tell him to do. And for me, it's like he seems to be a man that really cares about personal accountability, really cares about self-reliance, and some of these, I would argue, more traditional conservative values. But I don't trust that he will stand up for what he believes when he gets peer pressured by the Republican Party. And I don't want to vote for someone like that.
And he himself is a Republican?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, for me, when it comes down to voting for somebody as like a senator, I want somebody who is quite independent-minded. That could stand up against the party, and somebody who's very good at working with other people to come to a group consensus and make decisions together. Yeah. Because it's a group consensus process, like consensus building process.
I mean, it makes me...
It's flat organization, ideally.
It makes me think that just the eradication of parties.
It's hard.
Oh no, I know. But it makes me think there's just sort of this weird cronyism and stuff that seems to have really taken its rise in recent years. But if there wasn't this sense of a team that you're playing for, would that change? I'm not saying that this is the answer. It just makes me feel like, okay, no, we're all just individuals signing up for these jobs to be an actual representative. So then the incentive is to actually do that work and not, oh, I'm going to stay at bat for my red team or stay at bat for my blue team.
One of the most clever and I think elegant solutions for this is something my friend James D'Angelo has talked about quite a lot. I hope to have him on the podcast in the next week or two. But he believes that there should be more confidentiality in the voting process in the House and in the Senate, in Congress itself. Because that way, publicly, you can say we're on the same team, but when it comes down to the actual vote, you can vote with what your conscience says. And people don't know. And he says one of the most beautiful things about this is that few people want to pay you lots of money if they don't know at the end of the day whether you voted for what they wanted you to vote for. So it gets rid of a lot of the direct bribery, if there is any of it. But it also gets rid of what he calls brewbery, which is to threaten to pay money to your opponent. Oh, we would like you to vote this way. Oh, if you don't, well, we're probably going to donate $5 million to your opponent. So to your primary opponent in the same party who's going to primary you out. And so this intimidation tactics based on how you voted. And so I think one of the most simple ways to get rid of this is to just make it more confidential in the voting and the deliberation process. But I think it could help to weaken some of the strength that these parties have. I mean, I think the other thing I'd say is just remembering that we're all on multiple teams at the same time, whether we want to believe it or not.
Right.
We're all still human beings. We all still have a geographic area that we often hold alliance to. We also different parts of different families. We also have different all these different identities that were blending together at the same time. So when only one identity stands out, and that's the party identity, for me, it's just not very realistic. And
It suggests something greater. I mean, and the only other thing I wanted to add to that is also just to remember this is still an experiment.
yes, isn't life?
No,
Yeah, I feel so much better when I realize life is just an experiment. I don't have to know everything, and I can just try stuff.
yeah.
Like having a podcast with you that was supposed to end 10 minutes ago, but we were feeling the flow, and the hair was staying on screen. The whole time I was trying to make sure my hair was in frame. I didn't want to sit up too tall.
It felt pretty much in frame to me the whole time.
Good. Yeah. Well, Caleb, I appreciate the call today, and I hope some of y'all out there found it useful, and I appreciate those who chimed in with comments. If can I be that YouTube guy? Like and subscribe below. Is that what they do? They made fun of it on SNL. No, but really, if you want to subscribe and please comment, we like to see the comments, and they add a lot to the conversation. So thank you all for joining in. Caleb, any final words?
Have a great weekend, and rest when you can. Other than that, I guess happy fall.
Happy fall. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Talk to you soon. Have a good weekend. Bye.